everyone. What a treat to be with you all here tonight. Thank you so much for coming to our talk. We're really excited to get to spend some time with you having a great conversation. My name is Morwenna Collett and I'll be your host this evening. I'm a disabled access, equity and inclusion consultant. And tonight we're having a conversation which we've titled Creating an Inclusive Future. And it's held this week, which is during Invisible Disabilities Week, which is all about raising awareness of the 80 to 90% of people with disability living with conditions and access needs that are non-visible, that can't be seen. And tonight, I'm really thrilled that we've got two incredible artists joining us for our conversation. We have Nick McCarthy and we have Nat Bartsch, and I'll introduce you to them properly very, very soon. But before we begin, would just like to take a moment to ground us in an acknowledgement of country and pay my deep respects to the traditional owners of the lands we're tuning in from and joined on tonight, those belonging to the people of the Eastern Kulin Nations. Here in Australia, we live on unceded lands, and we just wouldn't be here making music, telling stories, if it wasn't for the thousands and thousands of years of care and custodianship of the traditional owners, elders and First Nations communities that they've been providing for a very long time. So, tonight's session is a relaxed session, so we would very much like to invite you to be with us in whatever way is most comfortable for you. So whether you need to move, stim, make noise, leave and come back, grab a cuppa if you're tuning in on the live stream at home, just be with us in whatever way works best for you. For those here in the room, we have a quiet space available, which is just out the door to the back on the left, and do feel free to come and go from that at any time. We've also got some fidgets around the room for anyone that would find that helpful, so do make use of the space in whatever way is comfortable for you. Would like to thank in advance that we've got Megan Busby doing our interpretation tonight, so thank you, Megan. And let's get into tonight's discussion. So, our topic, creating an inclusive future. We're going to particularly be focusing on classical music and disability. And I think in music, we often hear phrases like, music is a universal language, or music is for everyone. I'm sure we've all heard those sorts of things before. But I want to know, is it really? And is everyone truly welcome? So I myself am someone who studied music kind of 25 years ago at the Queensland Conservatorium, and I developed a non-visible disability just at the end of my first year of study. And at that time, I couldn't quite figure out how I was going to be able to fit into this mould of the classical music industry and how it could support the new access needs that I had. So for me, that ended up changing the whole course of my career. And now I work not as a performer, but on the arts administration side of things. And in hindsight, that was probably quite a good thing in terms of where the talent levels were at. But as an aside, it did kind of change things for me 25 years ago. So I'm really keen to talk to our guests tonight about what's changing in our industry and how it's evolving to become a more inclusive place for everyone. So the MSO, who are our generous hosts for tonight's conversation, recently released their inaugural Disability Inclusion Action Plan. And this really for them is a roadmap for change. It's about how they can better engage with the 21% of the Australian population living with disability, and how they can engage with us not just as audience members, but also as our artists and our workforce and all of our other different stakeholder groups in classical music as well. So I think this talk is a kind of reflection of how topics like this play a role in helping shape the future that we want to create. So we have much to discuss this evening, and now is the time for me to properly introduce my friends over here to you. So Nick McCarthy. Hello, Nick. It's so good to have you here. We're very, very pleased to have you on Australian soil for the first time.
Yes, it's lovely. You're all very warm and welcoming here in Australia. I've had a lovely time so far.
Excellent. So for anyone who's not familiar, Nick is without a doubt one of the world's most impressive pianists. Born without his right hand, he became the only one-handed pianist to graduate from London's Royal College of Music in its 130-year history, later receiving honorary memberships from His Royal Highness King Charles. Renowned for his incredible performances across the globe, he recently made his BBC Proms debut at the Royal Albert Hall with performing Ravel's Left-Hand Concerto with the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, and he will also be playing that very concerto this week. Nick was just reminding me backstage, Ravel has an anniversary this year, so it is the year of Ravel.
Year of Ravel this year.
Yes, 150 years. And of course, beyond the concert stage, Nick is an incredible speaker and broadcaster with TEDx talks, BBC presentations, you name it, he's done it. And his artistry and advocacy really continue to redefine what's possible in classical music. So we're very pleased to have him, and please join me in welcoming Nick.
Thank you.
And our second speaker, homegrown Melburnian.
Very Melbourne, yeah.
Nat Bartsch. Three-time ARIA-nominated pianist, composer, producer and advocate. There's a lot of hats going on there, Nat, many hats. Nat's soothing music is played across the world by people from all walks of life, often in deeply personal moments, literally from the birthing suite to the final hours before death. I've certainly enjoyed some of Nat's music as the mother of a small person, and the lullaby albums in particular, very, very helpful. Nat has released 9 albums and composed commissions for many leading ensembles, including one just this last weekend with the Monash University
Monash Art Ensemble.
Amazing. She's performed everywhere from Royal Albert Hall. I'm seeing a theme here, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I was in a smaller room.
No, still the Royal Albert Hall time.
Still Royal Albert Hall, absolutely. To jazz clubs in Japan and to the Australian bush. And in 2023, she's founded her own record label called Amica Records, which is the label for kind music. How great is that as a concept? So beautiful. And artist mentorship as well. So please join me in welcoming Nat.
Thank you.
Yes. So what an incredible pair of speakers that we have with us this evening. And the good news is, you might have noticed, we have a piano on stage, so we'll be hearing some piano playing from both of them as well. And at the end, we'll make sure that we have time for a Q&A with you guys, our audience, in the room and also online. So you'll get to ask them some juicy, burning questions as part of this talk as well. So, ready?
Yes.
Ready. Excellent. Yep. So I think to start, it would be great to hear a little bit from each of you about music and what it's like to be a professional musician and a disabled person, how those two things kind of work together. So I'd love to know how music came into your lives originally, and what is the role that music plays in your life as a person with disability. So I'm going to throw to you first on this one, Nick.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I had a very unmusical childhood. So my mum and dad were just very normal, hard-working people and normal jobs. And really, music didn't feature in my life, apart from, mum and dad washing up the dishes after dinner, listening to the radio, pop songs on the radio. That was it. There wasn't kind of some great aunt who was a concert violinist or, anything like that. And so I had a completely unmusical childhood, which is lovely now. It's my profession, because obviously I have to practice so much. So I look back very fondly with my childhood days, thinking, God, there was no practice involved then, lovely. And at the age of 14, I was in school, I went to state school, and we had kind of one talented musician, so she was wheeled out for everything, a prize giving or a parents' evening. So I'd heard her play many times, and a very good friend of mine to this day, and very, very accomplished pianist. And she, in this school prize giving, was playing Beethoven's Feldstein Sonata, one of Beethoven's late sonatas. And again, I knew nothing about classical music, as mentioned. And I just had one of those I describe it as an Oprah Winfrey moment, this kind of light bulb and this really life-changing moment at 14, where I kind of decided that was what I'm put on this earth to do, was to play the piano. I couldn't play the piano. But I was very kind of forthright about this. And I think I was very lucky that this life event happened at the age of 14, because we've all been 14 at some point, and we remember, it's so possible to do anything. It's teenage invincibility. It's so easy to become an astronaut. It's so easy to become, a concert pianist who has one hand. And obviously, as we know, it's not easy to become an astronaut. It certainly wasn't easy to become a concert pianist who has one hand. But that teenage invincibility really provided me with huge amount of self-propelling ambition. And that's how I started. That was like my beginning of wanting to pursue a career as a pianist.
Amazing. Oh my God. And that's quite late in terms of pianist terms, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And I'm imagining you probably had some good kind of advocates and good teachers along the way that saw the potential, I imagine, as well.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Mixed bag?
So obviously my friends and family, were obviously hugely supportive. And I got good quite quickly. So I used to play with what I affectionately call my little arm and my left hand. So anything with a with a one-note melody line in the right hand, I could play, because my little arm could hit one single note, and then I'd play the left hand. So I used to play kind of two-handed repertoire, if you like, with 1.5 hands. And so that's how I started. And there was one turning point one day where I was practicing on my little keyboard in my bedroom, and I'd mastered, I can't remember the piece, but I mastered the piece of music, and I was quite proud of myself. And I'd at the same time, because I didn't know anything about classical music, I was a bit of a sponge for it. So I was listening to Classic FM and kind of radio stations so I could find out what I liked and what I didn't like. And this one particular day, I was learning this piece, I practiced it and mastered it, and my dad shouted up the stage, "Oh, Nick, turn the radio down." And I was like, "It's not the radio, it's me." "It's not the radio, it's me." I was cross. And then he came upstairs with my mum and he said, "Can you play that again?" So I played them this piece, which I was like, "Oh yes, don't make me play." And then I was like straight away playing the piano, I loved it. And then they said, "Oh, that was really good." Obviously they didn't know anything about music, but they said, "Oh, that was really good, do you want piano lessons?" And that was the first. So I had a really cool local teacher. She was a bit like Alicia Keys, she was young and cool and a music student. So I think she was really embracing and really kind of, like think outside the box. Yes. But that wasn't always the case once I moved on, but yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's so important, isn't it, to have those kind of advocates and the people that can kind of see the potential and the pathways for you, because teachers can be amazing enablers or roadblocks, if they can't see those
or
things.
sadistic. I mean,
or that. That's right. All kinds of piano teachers in the world, I'm sure, yes. Nat, what about for you? How did music come into your life?
Well, my family was musical, and I started having piano lessons at the Yamaha Music School at Keyboard Corner out in Boronia in suburban Melbourne, where my grandfather was actually working selling pianos, and we eventually worked at the shop together when I was a teenager. And that was when I was really young. I started when I was 4. But, I guess my journey to becoming a professional pianist was a little different, because I played classical repertoire all the way up until the end of high school, but I wasn't particularly good at that, and I couldn't sit and practice repertoire, to at that repetitive kind of level that you need to really master material. My mind would just wander. And I found myself really enjoying what we would call the list D and E pieces, so the 20th century, jazz influenced pieces, impressionism, like Ravel. And so I was finding myself leaning towards contemporary genres of music. And much to my parents' initial dismay, I dropped out of Melbourne Uni doing a creative arts degree and went to TAFE and did jazz pop music at Box Hill, which at first was a step back in terms of my tertiary education, because I was going into a TAFE course, but I needed a couple of years to just kind of cast off from the shore of notated music and really start to be familiar with chords and learn how to improvise. And I ended up at the VCA doing the jazz degree. And I was really lucky that it's one of the jazz courses in the country that has world-class educators and also quite a strong emphasis on composition. So from second year onwards, my small ensemble classes would often just be that the tutor would say, so who's bringing in a tune next week? And I go, I'll try that. And that was exactly the right type of way into becoming an artist, because it was so free and I wasn't expected to retain a lot of theory about composition. You know, if I'd done a composition degree, I think I would have dropped out because I couldn't have absorbed all the information that I needed to enter that way. Instead, I came into it just from being at my instrument and having a go and writing from the heart. And then it turns out, of course, that I am one of those late diagnosed neurodivergent women. So I had a lot of other mental health diagnoses in my 20s and 30s, and then, of course, opened up a book about autism in women and went, oh, wow, that's me. And I just had no idea. Congratulations to anybody else who's also figured this out about themselves, because there's many of us at the moment. But it sort of explained why I struggled so much with tertiary education. In secondary education, the structure of school was enough to kind of keep me focused and do the work, and I got good marks. I would never have been picked up as being an ADHDer because I just had good school behaviour, good school performance. But it's funny talking about teachers that are advocates for you. And I think I was just really lucky that I had some piano teachers in my VCA degree that were really happy to meet me where I was at. And when I would say I hadn't practiced really at all that week, but I had a new composition, I was never in trouble. They just kind of met me wherever I was at and fostered that. And then, ironically, I've ended up kind of full circle back in the classical world because I started becoming commissioned to write for chamber music ensembles. And I also started to just explore being a solo artist and being a pianist and not stressing so much about whether the piece I was writing could be classified as jazz or classical composition.
Labels.
Because I love writing with ostinatos and repetition and in a really kind of neo-romantic lyrical way. And so I just stopped thinking about genre and calling it kind music. And I think once I sort of gave myself permission to create music on my terms, it clarified who I was artistically, and my career went well. So, yeah. Now I'm here on this MSO stage.
Yeah, you are. Look at that.
That's kind of
You never know where the world might take you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, what a fascinating trajectory, and such a good reminder that there are kind of so many alternate pathways that people can take, and things don't always have to look the same along the way.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
just how important that is.
Yeah.
Let's pick up on this idea of, I guess, kind of lean into the disability conversation now. Obviously, you guys have come from, you know, different places with this in terms of Nick, someone born with visible disability, Nat, someone who was diagnosed later in life with non-visible disability. And I'm really curious to kind of know, you know, how has the kind of nature of your disability influenced your life as an artist?
I would say for me, it's given me an incredibly thick skin. I think when you're born physically disabled, you know, if we walked down the street together in the summer and I had a short sleeve top on, you know what, people would stare at me just because I've got one less limb than everyone else, and it's completely natural and completely normal. I'm never offended by stares or anything like that, because likewise it's just human curiosity, and I know that majority of people don't mean any malice by that. I think, though, always walking into that room and just knowing that you're walking into a room and you're different, and people may want to ask a question, want to say no, you whatever. It's given me a real Kevlar exterior, and so which helped hugely for the beginning part of my career, because you know the red carpet wasn't rolled out for me in the classical music world in Britain, and it certainly wasn't kind of welcome, please come through, and here's the piano. You know, it wasn't that. I had to like bash down the doors. And so I think that is actually thanks to my physical disability, having that kind of relentlessness. And when someone tells me no, and it's always been the same, if someone says, oh, well, it's a shame he won't be able to do that, I'm like, watch me. And so, and
like a
it was
challenge.
definitely the same with piano. It was that. It was kind of a, okay, I'm hearing you, but I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah.
With the cheeky smile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
How about you?
And Nat, what about you?
I mean, for me, it's fascinating because I don't even really, I didn't really know who I was for like the first 15 years of my musical career in terms of like the way that disability played a role in my life. I'd had periods of burnout and depression and times where my mental health was rendering me unable to really perform and compose when I was younger. And actually it was the process of becoming a mother and having the repetitiousness of the day that most freelance creatives don't get that, right? We don't have a 9-to-5 job. So all of a sudden I had this boy that I was getting up for at the same times of the day and this kind of routine. And then all of a sudden my mental health just flourished. And that's been a framework that has helped me kind of excel as a freelance creative ever since. And for me, I think whenever anyone says they've discovered that they're autistic or ADHD, I always say congratulations, because I really feel that I'm blessed with a neurotype that can contribute to the world in a unique and important way, and all neurodivergent people have superpowers that can thrive if their needs are met. And of course, that's the challenge, because for a lot of us, our needs cannot be met very easily in a world that's designed for non-disabled people. And I think for me, it's perhaps the best way to describe it is that commission you mentioned recently. So on Sunday, I had a world premiere of a piece that I wrote for the Monash Art Ensemble. And it really would not exist the way that it does if I wasn't autistic and ADHD, because basically it was just this big-hearted idea that I carried around with me for a decade, where I wanted to interview climate scientists and find out how do they manage to get up out of bed every morning and quietly persist in mitigating climate change, and what can the rest of us learn from that? And I sat down and spoke with several scientists who are working for the National Climate Service, and had these, lovely, empathetic conversations. I broke all their words down into voice samples. I found all these sort of connective patterns and themes between our conversations, and broke that down into these movements, and then created this really emotionally regulating music that kind of drills deep and takes the listener through a 50-minute journey through gratitude, anger, despair, learning about all the terrible facts about the world, but then also these meditative, mindful mantras that these scientists use themselves to help them continue, leading to the end with a sense of catharsis. And it's like, I did it in 4 months. It's 360 pages of score and parts, 120 voice samples. Wow. I composed it for 15 musicians, and I was playing piano myself. There's, like, the level of workload was extraordinary. It was too much work to do in 4 months, but when it's your autistic special interest, it never feels like a chore. The only problem I have is making sure I stop work. And that level of commitment and that like deep sense of justice and empathy for others, and turning that into music that is emotionally and sensory regulating, is something that I don't think I would be. I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't neurodivergent. Probably something boring.
Accountant or something.
Yeah. So for me, I think there's like areas where it would be wonderful if my access needs were better met in the industry. But I think I'm just lucky that neurodivergent people have often found an industry where they can be themselves a little more than if I was a climate scientist working in government or working for the bank down the road. It's just, it is in many ways a very comfortable space where I can be myself. But that's also a privileged thing for me to say as a white middle class, mid to late career, performer who's doing okay with life. So I'm also aware of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, let's pick up on this kind of idea of access needs and how they can or cannot be met. And you've been doing some amazing advocacy in the neurodivergent space. Nat's been running neurodivergent artist meetups across Melbourne to provide opportunities to kind of network in a sensory-friendly way and meet industry folks and all of that good stuff. But I can imagine there's been times for you when your access needs haven't been met or where you might have had to kind of downplay or minimise your needs. So I'd love you to sort of talk to us a little bit about what that's like, and then maybe any kind of advocacy you've had to do for yourself to kind of get those needs met as well.
Yeah. Look, for a long time I didn't even know what my access needs were. And I think especially for mothers who are discovering their neurodivergence, they've usually been living in a very patriarchal society where they've been putting their needs to the side for a long time. And it took a real revisiting of my experience of the world, like what my sensory experience of everything was. When did I struggle cognitively with different tasks? And it's taken me a while to even pinpoint where support might be useful. I think for me, because I've been working in the industry for so long, I actually have less access needs in the musical workplace than perhaps outside of that. Like, you probably don't want to go and look at my music studio 3 days after the premiere of this Monash Art Ensemble piece. You can't really see the floor. I will probably get a support worker to help me put everything away and do a reconciliation of my merch and remind me to pay the bills, But when it comes to being in the workplace, there's a repetitiousness to the bumping, the sound check, what it's like to be a performer, meeting people afterwards and signing merch. And it's often only these little moments where things are outside routine as a performer that it becomes more difficult. Like when I played for the ABC Classic 100 with the MSO, that was my first time performing with an orchestra and following a conductor, because I'm often a small ensemble performer. It was also televised. It was also a full house. It was the largest audience I'd performed to live as well. I made the mistake of looking out at the audience before I walked on stage, and there's the third
never look out.
And I was like, why did I do that?
Just look out. Let's not put into it. Just look that way.
Just looked like this. and so then, that's when it's like I should have anticipated that more. But then I had this sensory experience of performing, and you would never know if you looked at the video on ABC iView. But I couldn't feel my left arm as I was playing because I have chronic pain condition that's sort of triggered by neurodivergent sensory dysregulation. And it is funny thinking about visible and invisible disabilities, because here I was performing with an orchestra with 2 hands, but I just couldn't feel one of them. But that was just my internal experience, and it was incredibly unpleasant. And I wouldn't wish that on myself ever again. But it's kind of complicated, because it's often about trying to anticipate your needs and ask for accommodations. But then, I fall into some internalized ableism and patriarchal expectations of myself, I think, and often downplay what my needs are. Because especially women in the music industry, you often still feel like you have to be extra good at everything.
There's been not just access barriers, but all sorts of barriers in the way.
Exactly. But also being an original artist is very hard, because there's that show must go on mentality. For soloists with an orchestra, I would imagine it's not too dissimilar. Like, you couldn't necessarily call someone up on the day and say, hey, can you play Ravel's left-hand concerto?
I reckon you'd be able to do
it. But, so it means there's often these moments where you might not be well, and calling in sick would mean refunding an audience. And letting that number of people down, I would never do that. I often don't listen to my own access needs and preference. Everybody having a good time which that's
deal with it
the
after.
showbiz thing.
Yeah, it is.
And
yeah,
it's
deal
so
with
hard.
it after. I know. Yeah.
So hard to get that right. Even right now, I just got this lapel mic put on and it's clipped to my bra strap and it's really itchy. I'd love to just like wander off stage and swap it around, but you know,
It's
I'll
a
just
relaxed
keep
show,
going.
Nat. If you need to disappear, no pressure. We can hold
I'll
the
be in
fort.
the quiet space for a while.
We'll find Nat out the back. Nick, let's come to you. Obviously, first time in Australia. We're very lucky to have you. And disability is kind of viewed differently in different countries around the world. We've got different legislation and things. And I have to say the UK is somewhere that we in Australia do look to quite often in this space because you're light years ahead of us. But I suppose, you know, anything different about being an artist with disability in the UK versus in some of those other parts of the world where you've travelled?
I mean, I would say, having obviously first time in Australia and obviously only working with MSO on this trip, I would say that you're actually really further ahead than you probably think you are, having been to many, many countries for my job. You know, one of the closest countries to me, only a couple of hours flight, obviously Germany, are kind of nearly 20 years behind when it comes to kind of disability stuff, you know. So, yeah, it's great to have been here and felt, you know, I feel very progressive. So, you know, that's fantastic. But, yeah, it's amazing how different disability is viewed around the world. And I forget, you know, in the UK we have a lot of disabled TV presenters, so it becomes very normal, and it's just very, you know, we're just used to seeing. We had disabled TV presenters on mainstream television for years and years, so no one thinks of it in that regard. Whereas I remember the first time I went to South Korea, and when in South Korea, when a mother finds out that, you know, her baby might be physically disabled, for instance, like take for me, you know, born with a limb difference, apparently, you know, from various sources, they just kind of go into hiding and, you know, get very upset about it. Obviously, it's upsetting. My mum wasn't thrilled about it herself, you know, but at the same time, they kind of go into a mourning about it. There isn't any disabled people on television. I did a very big TV show over in Korea, and one of the producers, who was a really great English speaker, she said, you're probably the first disabled person, and she's a TV producer, that I've seen on Korean screens. Wow. So it was quite amazing, you know, because obviously coming from Britain, where it's really not a thing with regards to that. And then likewise, you know, Germany, who really is quite backwards when it comes to that, and even on their language and how they do things. And again, they are really trying in certain places in Europe. But it feels very, very pigeonholed. So it's like, you know, they call it handicapped. And so they're like, oh, you're in a handicapped concert. And, you know, I mean, that doesn't sit well with me, and it wouldn't sit well with a lot of people. But at the same time, they're trying. Yeah. So it's kind of, you know, you've got to be, well, I always feel I can see they're trying, and it's a starting point. And hopefully, as things go on, it will change. But yeah, I find it very fascinating, the differences around the world.
Yes. And tell us more, Nick, about, because I know you sort of, you know, you played at the closing ceremony of the Paralympic 2012 in London, and
with Coldplay.
With Coldplay, yeah. I mean, yeah, name drop away, I say.
Just pick that name off.
Yes,
the floor
yeah, that's right. That's right. And so you've done some amazing work with some kind of in the disability space with the Para Orchestra, you know, and organisations that are, I guess, disability friendly, like Bournemouth, etc. So, yeah, obviously for you, tell us what it's like to kind of, I guess, be in the disability world versus the mainstream world as a musician, and kind of where that sits. Yeah,
I started, you know, I was one of the founding members of the Para Orchestra, which is obviously a disabled-led orchestra, and it was launched around the Paralympics of the UK 2012. And it was a fantastic time. Obviously, with me, it's quite different because my repertoire, left-hand alone pianist, you know, I've got 3,000 works for left-hand alone and 32 piano concertos and counting, because I'm commissioning as well. So in that regard, I'm kind of all of a sudden thrust into, you know, just into a normal season of concerts as part of the season, and then at the same time invited to go and give something in part of a disability season, for instance. So it really is treading the two lines, and especially in the earlier part of my career, it was probably more the kind of disability programming, versus now it's not, actually. So yeah, it was funny. I find, for me, the real mark of inclusivity is when it's not separated. And so, for instance, when I gave my Queen Elizabeth Hall debut, which is, you know, a big recital debut in London, they have, the South Bank Centre have a big disability festival called Unlimited, and Toke Starder, the artistic director from there, he said I want you to be part of the main season of solo piano recitals, you know, the international piano season, which for me spoke louder volumes about inclusivity, because he could have easily, and a lot of artistic directors would have said, oh yeah, Nick's going to do his debut. It's like, right, great, he's going to do a recital in Unlimited, within the Unlimited brand, and he didn't. And I said to him, that for me is real, true inclusivity, not just doing it with and putting me into that. So that's something I always kind of chat and very open about, and with artistic directors is it's great that you've got those things, but also let's open it out and let's not just do that. Let's
have all the spaces.
Exactly.
All the spaces.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, I think we should hear some of this repertoire you've been talking about, Nick. Let's hear some piano.
Okay, great.
So, Nick, you are going to play Scriabin's
I am.
Nocturne in D flat major from Prelude and Nocturne for the left hand. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So this is the first piece that I ever learned for left hand alone. It's written by the Russian composer Alexander Scriabin. He was just 18 years old when he composed this piece. He was a student in the St. Petersburg Conservatoire with two of the best concert pianists the world has ever seen, Rachmaninoff and Joseph Levine. And I'm thrilled I wasn't in that class. Quite a competitive class that would have been. And they were friendly rivals. They used to challenge each other to see who could learn certain fiendishly difficult pieces the quickest. And this one particular challenge was to see who could learn Liszt's Don Juan Fantasy, thankfully written for two hands. I've never needed to attempt it. It's a big pyrotechnic display at the piano, very difficult. And Scriabin, being a very competitive young man, decided that he was going to beat his contemporaries. So he practiced 10 hours a day, unfortunately contracting tendinitis in his right hand, leaving him completely unable to play for a whole year. But lucky for me and the rest of the musical world, he was a hugely tenacious, innovative 18-year-old man, and he decided to compose the beautiful Prelude and Nocturne, Opus 9, for left hand alone, and this is the Nocturne now, so I hope you enjoy. It's a squeaky stool, by the way, just adding to the, to the performance.
Drama. utterly gorgeous. Thank you. You can hear more of him this week.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night and Saturday. Nick, you mentioned before that there's, 33 piano concertos for left hand.
Yes.
Tell us more about this fascinating thing about why there's more left-handed repertoire than right-handed repertoire.
Yes, it's probably one of the most common questions and a very valid question that I get asked. So in the 19th century, concert pianists were like rock stars. I'm sadly in the wrong century. And, you know, take Franz Liszt, for instance, the great Franz Liszt. You know, he's like Adele. He'd sell out tickets in Europe, you know, in a few minutes of when he arrived. And as an encore, they used to, you know, to drive the crowd even more wild than they already were. These kind of demigod concert pianists would play a piece for their weaker hand. Most people in the world are right-handed, so your left hand tends to be slightly weaker, generally. And so this irony, you know, you thought I was good with two hands, wait till you see what I can do with my weak hand. And they'd play this big bravura piece and it would be, you know, wonderful. Fast forward in time to the 20th century, First World War happens. And for the exact same reason, you know, if you're in a wartime environment, you're more likely statistically to injure or lose your right limb, because it's your dominant hand and it's what you're going to be holding a gun with or whatever it was, you know. And so, as we know, hundreds of thousands of servicemen come back from battle, often missing limbs, often their right limb. And there was one man particularly, there was quite a few different commissioners at the time, but there was one man particularly, Paul Wittgenstein, brother of the famous philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein and part of the very wealthy, influential cultural family in Vienna, the Wittgensteins. And his life dream was always to become a concert pianist. And he went and gave his two-handed concert debut in Berlin to rave reviews, and then was swiftly drafted into action into the front line. And within 6 months, he took a Russian bullet to the right shoulder, and it was crudely amputated. So you imagine having given your concert debut to then very quickly losing your right arm in battle. Lucky for him, if there's any luck, you know, but he was repatriated back to Vienna, and it was here that he really used his family connections and his family wealth, they were a hugely wealthy family, to commission the leading composers of the 20th century, the real celebrity composer names, so Ravel, Prokofiev, Benjamin Britten, Richard Strauss, Korngold, you name it, anyone who was kind of active and big at that point, Hindemith, even, you know, really 20th century, he commissioned and expanded that already present 19th century body of work. He expanded it then hugely with really big names in the 20th century. So yeah, it's a really, there's, like I say, there's 30 plus and counting commissions, because obviously now I commission and want to expand the repertoire further for the next century's one-armed pianists, so they can hopefully say, you know, I always say thank for Paul Wittgenstein for the career I have today, and hopefully they say, oh, thank God Nicholas McCarthy commissioned this concerto, because they're playing it with the MSO or something in 100 years' time. So yeah,
an important legacy to
absolutely. I think it's important because there's for some reason seems to be every century it seems to have this one-handed professional. There's lots of one-handed pianists, but I'm talking, you know, a concert pianist. And, you know, in the 19th century, we had Count Jay-Zazicki, 20th century, Paul Wittgenstein, and for some reason, 21st century, you got me. So, you know, I feel it's very important that I continue commissioning and expanding that repertoire. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Let's move our conversation on to talk about audiences with disability now, because, of course, they're a really important part of creating this inclusive future that we want to see for classical music as well. Now, Nat, you've been doing some really interesting work around audience accessibility for the concerts that you've put on, not only looking at your own access needs, but the needs of those people that can actually come and be with you in concerts. So tell us about what you've been up to and how that's been working.
Well, it's certainly been highlights of my professional and creative life. Maybe I should swap my mic. So I created an album last year called Forever Changed, which is a lullaby album in the loosest sense of the word lullabies, in that it's inspired by my family environment and it's music that's intending to soothe. But rather than thinking about parents and babies as being the target audience, which I had previously done, I decided to explore what the kind of neurodivergent sensory experience of music could be, what music soothes me, and also other autistic and ADHD people. And so I interviewed some music therapists and also fellow neurodivergent people of different ages, and created an album called Forever Changed. And I describe it as it being like my previous lullaby album, Forever and No Time at All, except it's covered in glitter, musically. It's multi-layered and rich, and it's got lots of ambient effects and harp and strings and synth arpeggiators and synth bass that you can feel through the floor, and it's sort of sensory-seeking, soothing music. But of course, that also has extended to doing live performances. And I just really wanted to challenge, I guess, people's expectations of what a concert of classical music or my music should be, because, you know, we often live in a world where concerts are very much a listening environment. You know, it's very, you know, strict, I guess, in terms of audience expectations. I got in trouble once for shifting in my seat too much when I went to see Salome at the opera. And so I thought, well, hold on, let's just see what I can do differently. And so there's been the rise of relaxed performances, which, you know, are trying to consider these needs, like the idea that any of us right now could just pop out for a bit, have a break, come back. We could arrive late, leave early, you know, move around. Maybe we have a vocal stim or some kind of need to use our voice or our bodies, and all the idea that is a safe space, you can do that, that's becoming a thing. But it's very rare for the artists themselves to be the driver of relaxed performance. It's usually the domain of major organisations or large venues who might have an access and inclusion budget or a goal to try and expand access to their concerts. And then they are going to an artist and saying, oh, would you like to do a relaxed performance? Or could we add on, you know, a matinee that's a relaxed performance to a season? And that's awesome, but often these types of events are a little bit restricted in some way, partly by the funding and the post-COVID environment. You know, trying to really meet all access needs is very difficult. But also, it's not coming from the creative work itself. It's more like increasing access to all music by having these relaxed performances on. So I decided to experiment with building a relaxed performance kind of from the ground up. And I was lucky to be artist in residence next door at Recital Centre last year. So I built a surround sound solo show for Forever Changed. And I did a preview relaxed performance, and I had sensory beanbags and fidgets. There's some here, by the way, you can help yourselves if you want to use them. And I brought in some autistic ADHD consultants, I guess you could say, and everyone kicked back and relaxed, and I sort of got some further feedback about what worked and what didn't in the space. And leading to premiere performances, which included a relaxed performance at 6 p.m, because neurodivergent people can have jobs, and going to a concert in the evening that is meeting our needs is really, really nice. And so I now perform the show in like a normal evening environment, but I also do relaxed performances, and I try and offer several in the day to accommodate different age groups and different needs. And I own 6 sensory beanbags now. Thank you, Creative Victoria.
Yes.
I forgot I have to store them between shows. It's a little tricky.
Your beanbag room.
Yeah. My son makes great cubbies. Yeah. But yeah, I will roll up to a venue and kind of scale up what a relaxed performance might otherwise be. And it includes things like, you know, artistic decisions about the lighting design or what level of volume is coming out of the PA system, but also what types of sounds. I have this single note arpeggiator that I have in one of my songs in Forever Changed. So it's like the same note just going around and around. And I remember my partner at the time was like, this is a really unusual thing to be putting in the music. And I was like, I just really feel like I need to hear this sound. Let's just do it and see what happens. And then I did the preview show, and somebody said to me, "That is the most satisfying sound I've ever heard in my life." So I suppose I'm just hoping that, you know, I'm meeting some kind of need in the community, even though it's not every day, but when I can do it, it's just wonderful. Also, just being on stage and celebrating neurodiversity, I think, seems to be important. I see parents coming with their teenage daughters, or, you know, young families coming all together, and just seeing, you know, a living Australian composer, performer who's literally saying, "Congratulations if you are also autistic like me." And at the merch table, I sell fidgets. And you see these teenage girls come up and they're opening the Velcro wallet. Like, oh, the Velcro wallets are so cute. And then just blowing like all their pocket money on getting a fidget spinner and getting me, you know, to sign the tin. It's just like, I think there should be more stuff like this going on, but it's nice to be one of the first.
Awesome. Well, we're certainly seeing the prevalence of relaxed performance increase here in Australia.
Yeah.
But Nick, you would have seen some interesting successes and maybe some failures around kind of audience accessibility in your travels.
Yeah, I mean, I always find it's very difficult, and I feel there's no kind of, even as if we as a panel we can't solve it all. Do you know what I mean? It's such a wide umbrella that it's kind of an impossible task, really, but we just have to do and continue to learn and continue to do all those things. But, I mean, for me, the relaxed performances are great and are fine, as long as I'm talking from artist perspective, obviously, from, you know, when you're doing that, you know it might be noisier, you know there might be distractions, and, you know, you just have to focus through that, and that's hard. You know, it's hard as an artist to do that. I'm not going to lie. It's not the most enjoyable of performances. What's enjoyable is seeing people who would be excluded from that absolutely loving and getting so much out of what you are doing. That's the bit that is then so fulfilling that you're seeing, and I'm sure you'd agree with that. It can be quite hard going sometimes, depending on what's going on. I think where some venues get it wrong is when they are trying to be so open and inclusive to the detriment of the majority in the audience and the artist, you know, and that's happened with me before, where I've done a recital it was in the afternoon, I would say. It was kind of, you know, so again, that was quite excluding some people, unfortunately, but it was an afternoon relaxed recital, and it was really great, and I loved it, and again, the feedback was fantastic, and you could, people I was speaking to afterwards clearly enjoyed it, as did I. It was great. And then the evening recital was very much a ticketed, formal recital, and it was an important venue and an important date for me as an artist. And I don't quite know what happened, but basically all I will say is a crash mat was brought in. It was a high plinth stage, and a crash mat was brought in and put at the bottom on the ground floor of the stage, and a very, very severely disabled man was kind of put on this crash mat and was very, very noisy, and, you know, just part of his own communications. He would have, you know, been hugely welcome in the earlier one, but unfortunately it was so distracting to me as well. It was almost impossible to perform through it. And then likewise, you know, people had paid a lot of money to be there. It was a very important venue in Europe, and it was a shame. You know, it was a shame. But for him, it was a shame as well, because he didn't get much out of it because he couldn't see me. None of the sensory lighting that was already put on was there. There was none of the other provisions that was put on for the earlier concert. So he didn't enjoy it either, you know, I imagine. And obviously, unfortunately, the audience didn't, and I didn't as an artist. So again, that was a failure, actually, on all parts, on serving our disabled, you know, community, but also artistically, and also our audiences, who, let's remember, are the majority as well. So it was a very eye-opening thing, and I gave some very strong feedback, as you can imagine, on that, from all angles, you know, not just my own angle, but just from his. When I spoke to his PA and everyone around, and she was cross as well. So it wasn't, you know, and when I explained the earlier concert, she agreed that he would have absolutely loved that, and it was just, you know. Yeah, so
it's communication, isn't it? Around, you know, just being clear about what something is, and helping guide people to the option that's going to suit them best, and being able to give people the tools to prepare themselves in a way to make that choice. I'm swiftly, we've got kind of 15, 20 minutes-ish left. I think we should hear some more music. So I'm going to throw to Nat, who's going to play us the title track from Forever Change, which is the album she was just talking about before. So Nat, tell us.
Well, Forever Changed was the album I was describing before, and this is actually a very, very dear piece to me because the left-hand part that you hear at the beginning, it was actually written by my son at the piano. So the first lullaby album I wrote, he was a newborn, and at the end, all you can hear is some goo goo gaga. But at the end of Forever Changed, he has his own musical mark. And so he just went up to the piano one day and just started moving through this ostinato, perfect time, because he's the son of a drummer. And I was like, well, that's very nice. Do you think maybe I could try and write a piece with that? And he said yes. And when I do relaxed performances, if Will's around, we do it as a duet. So he's not here today, but that does mean I get to go to the more harmonically elaborate section as well. So this is Forever Changed.
how spoiled are we having to
I also feel very spoiled.
What beautiful performances, both of you. Thank you. Before we move to our audience Q&A, I'd love to kind of get to this question about the future, and the future that we want to create for classical music. I guess it's no secret that this is an art form that has historically been, based on things like exclusivity and elitism and all of those things, and only a few performers kind of can really make it, and it attracts a certain types of audience demographic, etc., etc. I suppose, what do you think still needs to shift in this industry for things to become truly inclusive for the classical music industry of tomorrow and beyond?
Ooh.
I mean, that's the $1 million question. Nat, you're going to go first.
Okay. I suppose I'm in an interesting place in the classical industry or music scene, because for the most part I've risen through the jazz scene and then the neoclassical scene, which is similar, but it sort of intersects with ambient music and other genres. So I still often feel like an outsider looking in, although that's often the case just in life in general because I'm neurodivergent. But I think for me, I don't know, I just thought a phrase I said once when I was describing Forever Changed for like a press video, where I said I was trying to create a musical space where everyone is welcome and everyone can be themselves, is what I'm trying to do. And maybe that's a phrase that would be lovely to be able to apply to just everywhere. But I think for as long as it's a genre that is structured often around programming a lot of Western classical tradition-based music, there are going to be expectations of audiences, and there'll be ways of having to run rehearsals. There'll be sort of like a whole bunch of conventions that they are really hard to shift. I mean, even say if we think about workplace accommodations that could be made for a neurodivergent person, things like having a flexible start time for your workday and then being able to leave when you are also feeling like your work is done. How do you offer that for an orchestra who's all meant to be in the one place starting on bar one at the same time? So it's very difficult, but I think the more that we champion a diversity of creative voices, both as performers and composers, and particularly, continue to try and find ways to show audiences the sort of vast and incredibly wonderful contemporary repertoire that's out there, the more we have the opportunity to look at things a different way and run things a different way. I mean, gosh, I would love to meet the challenge of trying to write a piece that you could have for an 80-piece orchestra where everybody's start and arrival times for rehearsal could be flexible. I'm going to really think on that.
Next commission, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Food for thought.
Nick, you've been doing some really interesting work around the next generation, I guess, of musicians coming up with some great work in with the syllabus you've been working on in the UK. Tell us a bit about that and what that's going to do for the industry.
I think for me, I jumped, as I referenced earlier, I hammered down many a door, and I kind of feel like, I'm very lucky and through hard work, but also I think it's always, being a performer is luck of the draw as well, I think, to an extent. To be in this position that I am and performing all over the world and doing what I do, I was very keen on changing the pathway for younger pianists so they don't have to kind of go through and have the awkward conversations that I had to have. And so what's your exam board called? I forget.
AMAB.
Yeah, so our version is ABRSM, Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music. So I've worked with them to create the first syllabus of one-handed repertoire from initial grade right up to grade 8. So anyone with a limb difference or an acquired limb difference, you might have had a stroke, you might have even temporarily lost the ability to play with one side of your body. You can now do your piano exam grades, and it's open, and that obviously wasn't there before. So it's something I'm very proud of. The initial to grade 5 kind of launched last August, and the uptake of it has just been overwhelming. Even I kind of said to ABRSM, look, I get loads of messages online. from parents or from people with limb differences, please, can we do something? Well, it was overwhelming, so then we've done the 6 to 8 now. So yeah, it's all out there, which is great.
So good. Well, you are, changing the future of the industry, both of you, in the incredible work that you're doing, opening things up for future disabled musicians to come. I've been very greedy and had all the questions so far, so I'd love to throw it open to the audience for our last sort of 5 to 10 to see if you have questions that you'd like to ask of Nick and Nat. They're open to anything, I'm sure. So I'm just going to check, because we've got the ability to use Slido for anyone who wants to ask a question out there on our live stream audience or online, and also here in the room, if you'd just like to raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you, and we would love to hear your questions. I can actually see that I've got one from the live stream, so I might start there and let our audience in the room warm up and think of your questions. But I've got a question here from one of our listeners. When do we move on from access and inclusion to disabled cultural equity? Now, it'd be interesting to take your take on that, but I think perhaps that's picking up on the point that we're often talking about how to make things accessible, and actually perhaps what we haven't gone into a huge amount of depth on tonight because of time is like disabled identity, perhaps in music making, and perhaps that's at the heart of disabled cultural equity. So, Nat, as an advocate, just wonder if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the more work that's created, by us, with us, and for us, the better. Rather than, that sort of retrofitting things to become more accessible. And if we try and create work or produce concerts that are thinking about accessibility from the start, that is a really awesome next step. But if that is co-designed and really meaningfully consulting with the community of people that live with disability, the end result is going to be so much more amazing. And I guess I just think the arts is all about showing people, perspectives on the world that they might not have ever considered before. And, it's like a little window into an artist's way of being or way of thinking and feeling. And, I think if we are able to create an environment where it's just the norm to have composers with disability or neurodivergent artists programmed, regularly in a concert season or on stage, then it no longer becomes like an add-on or something special or extra. It's just normal, which is as it should be. I can't remember that, you probably know the statistics about how many people within their lifetime will acquire some kind of...
Oh, all of us.
Yeah.
On average, all of us will spend 7 to 8 years of our lives living with disability.
Yeah.
It's the only diversity club anyone can join at any moment in time. If you're not one of us now, you will be at some point, statistically. Yes.
Yeah. And so, just to make that normal. I also think about it with audience expectations in other ways. And, for example, if I do a concert in the evening and it's forever changed, I still say to my audience, if you need to leave at any point, come back, please feel free. I want you to feel relaxed, but nobody ever does. They're always just like this. And I try and put up some examples, like maybe you're pregnant and you feel like vomiting right now. Just so you know, you can leave. You don't have to.
Don't have to do that here.
Like there's so many reasons why. It's like having universal access or improving accessibility. It benefits so many people in society. It's like you make a ramp for wheelchair users, and then all of a sudden every tired mum with their pram and a toddler or dad is able to get into the building more easily as well. It's like the more inclusive we can be, the more everybody's lives can be improved by that, I think. I hope that speaks to the question well.
Beautiful. Thanks, Matt.
No worries.
Questions in the room? Anything anyone would like to ask? We have 2 incredible artists here. Did I see a hand? Oh, yes. Hello. We'll just grab a mic to you, if that's all right. Where's our mic runner?
Hello. Hi. Nat, you're one of the few artists I see in the music and the arts sector where you bring community with you. Is there more that disabled arts leaders can do to do what you do?
Oh, that's a lovely question. Maybe, I think the privilege of being in a certain point in your career, perhaps, is that you can bring kind of ideas that are outside the box, like being artist in residence last year and saying, I think I want to co-design a relaxed performance. You know, they're the types of things that you can pitch once you're at a certain career level. And I would really like to think that it's every individual's got their own agency to kind of engage with the community that they belong to and present concerts in whatever way is comfortable for them. Like, I'm a very entrepreneurial-brained, policy graduate type person. So I sort of think about these, you know, systems and kind of designing solutions to things. But I think everybody has, you know, to quote Joelle Gurgis actually from my climate thing, everybody just needs to figure out how they want to show up in the moment and contribute. In her case, she's talking about climate change, but I think with accessibility and inclusion, it's kind of the same. But I feel like there shouldn't be any kind of rules about it, you know, whatever works. And even if that means you're only partially able to offer accessibility at your shows, I think sometimes people get really spooked about trying to meet every access need, that they don't do anything because they don't want to get it wrong, they don't want to be criticised. Like maybe they can't afford an Auslan interpreter for their show or live captioning. So in the end, they don't even increase the accessibility at all. And I think that's also a real shame. I think perfect is the enemy of good. And it's just, you do what you can with the resources and spoons that you have at any given moment. And if we all did that a little bit, maybe things would shift quite a bit, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks, Nat.
No worries.
We've probably got time for one more question if there's anything else burning. Yes, hello. We'll just grab a microphone to you so everyone can hear.
Thank you. Nat, I also share your passion for systems and
Yes, you do.
structures, and I'm a kind of institutional person. And Australia, for all its many faults in this space, is the home of the NDIS and all of the challenges that it's faced and facing. But it's still an extraordinary achievement in terms of trying to reflect nothing about us without us principle. How do you see the really big benefit that that's brought to the nation to affect particularly music and cultural institutions, but perhaps broader systems of what it means for disability inclusion? Yeah,
it's a really interesting time for the NDIS, as you said, because, you know, trying to make it financially viable or and the decisions that are being made in ways that reduce the cost. What I'm kind of seeing is it's like a microcosm of what society is generally like in Australia with the arts, where it's kind of first on the chopping block. So the thing I absolutely adore about the NDIS is the idea that the participant is often in a position to have their disability needs supported in a way that is really customised and bespoke and suits wherever they're at in their lifespan with what needs they have. And that includes things like if you are the type of person that absolutely adores visual arts, or you are an aspiring professional drummer, that you can have NDIS funding that is supporting those ways of engaging with the arts. I think when plans are getting smaller, the challenge is still showing to, you know, the people that work within the agency the value and importance of the arts, which we have to do across all of Australia all the time, right? Like sport it's really quantifiable, tangible way of measuring how impactful it is for society, you know, like gold medals at the Olympics or increased fitness in children, and, you know, team sports. It all makes sense. But funding the arts is always so tricky because it's so subjective what's good or bad, you know, music in anyone's mind. But also I think people sort of see it as like an optional add-on, you know. Like, it's a bit like how music therapy was previously categorised as being not an allied health profession, which, you know, I felt like you only could make that assumption if you're assuming that music is inherently not like a part of people's lifeblood, like oxygen. And for some people with disability, it is. So, yeah, I'm so grateful for the way that the NDIS has improved my family's lives in different ways. And I guess I think there's at least going to be a generation of us that just had that incredible life transformation of what life was like before it existed, and then all of a sudden it's in our various lives in different ways, and just your eyes are opened up to what it's like to live a life where things can be supported in all sorts of different areas at, you know, on any given day. It's no longer the chronic care plan or the mental health plan. It's, you know, across all domains of your life. And I'm quietly optimistic we can continue to find a way to kind of help make that benefit so many people's lives into the future. And yeah, and I'm really excited that, you know, when music therapy was sort of recategorised, that the government adapted so quickly to, you know, consult with music therapy leaders and have the review of whether there was evidence, and it turns out there's heaps, yeah. And I think that's really promising too, because yeah, for me, I mean, I don't know how many countries in the world have done something like the NDIS before. We're the first. Yeah, it's so special. So yeah, I hope we can keep doing it. But you know, I think for autistic families at the moment, there's just so many unanswered questions, and I think, yeah, I'd love to answer your question in 2 years.
Oh, well, look, sadly, we are going to have to bring our kind of questions and conversation to a close now. We've worked our panellists hard enough for the evening, I think. But before we wrap, just a couple of kind of plugs and reminders. Nick McCarthy at Hamer Hall tomorrow night and Saturday afternoon with a very, very nice sounding MSO. Rehearsal's going very well, isn't it?
Very well, yeah.
Very
They're
good.
sounding fantastic.
Yes, you even got to finish early yesterday. It was
I
too
did.
good.
That's the first for a rehearsal. Yeah, great.
And Nat has coming up 9th of November. There'll be another neurodivergent artist meetup happening at Bakehouse Studios. And there will be a new album out next year as well.
Oh, yes, yeah. Hopefully a climate change themed album called Acceptance Does Not Mean Surrender, which I'm hoping to time before COP31. Might tour to Adelaide, we'll see. But also, I should say, on the 13th of February next year, there's a work that I've collaboratively composed with Stefan Casaminos and Georgia Scott and the Find Your Voice Collective, which is being premiered by the MSO. It's a free concert at My Music Bowl, and it's a piece called Ripple, which was a concept devised by the collective, which is a group of performers with disability from Warrnambool. And it's thinking about the ripple of a drop in a pond coming and expanding. And yeah, I had a lot of fun thinking about how to represent that visually and musically with some ripply chords that come out from the violas all the way to the back of the stage. And you can sit on the hill at the My Music Bowl for free and see if I pull it off. I'll find out.
So good. Well, thank you so much to the MSO for hosting tonight's conversation, and please join me in thanking our incredible panellists for such a great conversation.
Thanks for having me.